Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. I am Renee Leyva, President of the Rails Board. I hereby call this meeting to order on Friday, October 25th at 1 o'clock. Emily, could you please call roll?
Sure. Monica Caldecott.
Here.
Jean Carroll. Jennifer Cutshall.
Here.
Nupum Goyal.
Here.
Brian Gregory.
Here.
Diane Hollister. She's here. Jennifer O'Bannick.
Here.
Amanda Kowalski.
Here.
Renee Leyva.
Here.
Julie Millivec. Emily Porter. Alex Vancina.
Here.
Vanessa Villarreal. Karen Boydick.
Here.
Catherine Yanikowski.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Emily. Next item is the recognition of guests and announcements. Let's start here in Burr Ridge with guests.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Sharon Swanson, Rails.
Maggie Toman, Rails.
Jody Rubel, Rails.
Layla Heath, Rails.
Amy Hop, Rails.
Go ahead.
Dan Bus from Rails.
Emily Feister, Rails.
Mark Miller, Rails.
All right, not to the guests in East Peoria.
No guests here in East Peoria.
All right, that sounds exciting. Thank you, Alex. Emily, could you please read the names of the guests attending via Zoom?
Yes, we have Joe Philippek, Rails, Ryan Hubble, Rails, Sam Daly, Rails, and Ola Gronsky, Rails.
You, and are there any other announcements at this time? No, all right. Thank you. We will now move on to public comments. Are there any public comments from those present here in Burr Ridge, East Peoria, or from Zoom participants? Thank you. Emily, did we receive any public comments by email?
Did not, but I have some people that just let into the Zoom room, and that's Ann Slaughter, Mark Hatch, and Julie Davenport.
We will proceed to the consent agenda. Hence, the consent agenda includes the following items: adoption of the agenda, the Rails Board minutes of September 27th, 2024 regular meeting, and the approval of disbursements from September 2024. Does anyone wish to move any item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda for further discussion? If there are no other changes or no changes to be made, may I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Approved as amended, Karen.
It was not amended. Approved as presented.
Approved as presented, Karen. I knew I was saying it wrong.
That was on my end. My apologies. All
Seconded, Amanda.
right, thank you, Karen and Amanda. Emily, can you please call roll?
Sure. Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
Jennifer Cutshall.
Yes.
Nupum Goyal.
Yes.
Brian Gregory.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Jennifer O'Bannick.
Yes.
Amanda Kowalski.
Yes.
Renee Leyva.
Yes.
Alex Vancina.
Yes.
Karen Boydick.
Yes.
Catherine Yanikowski.
Yes.
All right, next we have Sharon Swanson with the financial report. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Renee. Thank you very much. So you'll find the financial reports for the month of September in your packet. So the September 30th general fund cash and investment balance was approximately 22.5 million. This would fund approximately 19 months of budgeted fiscal year 2025 operations. As you all know, we have not received any area per capita grant payments as of yet. Last year, we received the first one on towards the end of November. So hopefully we will see the same pattern this year, but we will see. General fund revenues through September were approximately $2.46 million. And these were approximately $744,000 below budget. Of course, as I keep saying, this is primarily due to the EBSCO group purchase and the change caused from the statewide database program and the institution of that program. This is also due to the revision in the LSAP support grant for that open RSA position that was eliminated, which results in a lower payment from RSA to Rails. We did also have a couple of revenues that offset these below budget revenues. So we had above budget investment income. We had budgeted interest rates at that blended rate of 4.25%. But using Illinois funds as a guideline, interest rates are currently running at around 4.9%. This is as of yesterday, which is 0.8% lower than the rate from the peak of our interest rates, which was October of this last year, and that was 5.73%. So interest rates have begun to decline due to the Federal Reserve's actions this last month to cut interest rates by 0.5 percentage point. And they plan to do another 0.5 percentage point cut at their meeting on November 7th. So we do expect interest rates to continue to drop. Additional cuts totaling 1 percentage point are projected over the course of calendar year 2025. And the federal funds projected rate as of December 2025 is currently 3.4%. So that's where they're projecting that they will end up. But we all know that things can change between now and then, and that can dramatically change. So depending on how aggressive the Federal Reserve's actions continue to be, Rails could end the year very close to what we had budgeted for interest income. Rails also had unbudgeted grant revenue from our two grant programs that had been applied for, but the application had not yet been approved yet by the Illinois State Library. Those were the cataloging services grant, World Language Cataloging Services grant, as well as the ongoing development and enhancement of L2. These will be recorded within and paid for out of the general fund. Moving on to expenditures, Rails's general fund expenditures through September were a little over 4.3 million, and these were just over 1.24 million below budget. This is due to below budget library materials from that EBSCO group purchase because we have those offsetting expenditures, as well as timing differences between other smaller group purchases, budgeted and actual. We also had below budget contractual services expenditures from the normal week's delay in receiving and paying our outsourcing vendor. And as we all know, we had budgeted gas prices at $4.25 per gallon. Thank goodness we've been consistently below that. So we have less than anticipated fuel surcharges from the same delivery outsourcing vendor. And for ourselves, we also have less than anticipated fuel charges for ourselves and our fleet. So vehicle expenditures, moving smoothly into that, we have that little bit of lag time between receiving and paying for our delivery fuel card providers invoice that comes in. Lower fuel prices, we had less of a need for repairs and maintenance on our vehicles because we replaced a little over half of our delivery fleet over the past year and a half. So that's great news. In addition, other vehicle expenses are below budget because we waited to brand the new vehicles as a group to save on those expenses. Personnel expenditures were below budget from the normal recruitment delays in filling new positions, including our library resource specialist who began in September, Maggie Toman, who's sitting next to me, as well as the temporary data analysis intern and temporary cataloging services assistance position, which are in various stages of recruitment at the moment. We also had less of a need for temporary help for delivery through September, but this is expected to end the year much closer to budget as we progress. So Rails also had below budget professional services expenditures from consulting projects that either have not yet begun yet or have not been billed. These include various things such as succession planning, the World Language Cataloging translation services, which they're a little backlogged with their billing at the moment. Our website accessibility audit that we have planned, HR memberships for libraries that are partially subsidized by Rails. And we've had less of a need for legal services through September, but of course, as the policy committee's work continues to progress and various things come up during the year, those will probably end the year much closer to budget. And I did want to report during September, Rails received and paid for 6 of the 8 vehicles purchased for the year 2025. We're still awaiting the 13th and final box truck ordered in 2024 and the 2 remaining box trucks for 2025. These come from that same vendor and they're a little bit backlogged in their box truck production. So with these purchases, as I mentioned before, Rails has replaced a little over half of our delivery fleet. So we are better on track at getting on that regular replacement schedule for our vehicles. And That's just about all that I had. May I answer any questions?
All right, thank you so much, Aaron. If there's no questions or concerns, we're just going to move on to reports. Reports from the Rails president. I do have some news concerning our board members. First, unfortunately, Vanessa Villarreal Krenzel has tendered her resignation. I would like to thank Vanessa for her dedication to the Rails board and wish her well in her next venture. The call for nominations will go out soon and the executive committee will meet to interview candidates. Second, Emily Porter has accepted a new position as the medical librarian at OSF St. Anthony's in Rockford. Congrats to Emily. She holds an at-large seat on the Rails board, so this move does not affect her board position in any way. Your packet also includes the committee reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding their contents? All right, we're moving along. This is good, you know, some cases. Now we have Monica with the Rails monthly report. Monica, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Renee. Hello, all. Good afternoon. We wanted to highlight for you especially the Illinois Library Association's annual conference in Peoria. Just took place October 8th through 10th. It's the big time of the Rails year, and for many of you as well. As you saw in your report, there was a huge number of Rails staff working at our booths, presenting, doing poster sessions. We had many staff members and board members on the conference committee this year as well. So there was a huge amount of work that went in to the Rails part of the conference, but we also do a lot of learning at this conference, and it's a great opportunity for us to connect with members, to make sure that we are doing a lot of learning about what's happening in Illinois as well. I wanted to highlight kind of 3 things that were in the report because I want to make sure that all of you know. And the first is that I wanted to share with you the award that Rails won and shares with many of our library partners. That's the Atkinson Award. As many of you heard, Rails was the recipient of the Hugh C. Atkinson Memorial Award for Interlibrary Cooperation. The award was received for creating the 2023 Illinois School Libraries Workers Symposium. This symposium was really an exciting opportunity for partnership, but I especially wanted to call out that though Rails and many of our partners won this award, our own Dan Bostrom was really instrumental towards creating this, having the need for it and moving it forward. So I wanted to especially call out Dan's efforts in making this happen, and also of course thank the Illinois Library Association for honoring the symposium. And as you all saw in the report, the 2nd annual symposium happened in September, so we're really excited to see that work continuing. As we noted, there were many Rails staff and board members that presented. As you saw later in the report, you could kind of see all of the reports and poster sessions that staff members were involved with. And I also especially wanted to thank our Rails board members for working that booth. It's really important for our members to see not just the staff, but to also see the board and have an opportunity to ask you questions about what it's like to work on the Rails board and what things that Rails might be able to do for them. So I wanted to thank those of you who were able to do that. And also thank Renee Leyba, Gwen Gregory, and Jean Carroll from the Rails Executive Committee, who joined myself, Leslie Bednar, and 3 representatives from the Illinois Heartland Library System Board for a social dinner to kind of get to know one another during the conference. I know that Gwen and Renee are with me today. I don't know if you all have anything to share, but it was a nice opportunity to get to know each other.
We did not talk about anything to do with not going through official business, none whatsoever. It was all actually very personal. It was really nice to meet them. It's a very good way of introducing each other, and then hopefully we can create some type of partnership later on to getting to work together and essentially save taxpayer money too at the same time, because we can just put all of our heads together and then share our resources. But no, it was really good meeting, and looking forward to more to come.
Yeah, it was great to just get together in a relaxed environment and get to meet some of our counterparts essentially.
Yeah.
And just chat, and it was good.
Thank you all. I know it's a busy conference for everybody that's there, but I know for you too, especially there was a lot going on. So I really appreciate you taking that time.
I also enjoyed working at the booth a lot because
Yeah.
it's very easy to work at the Rails booth because there's so much great stuff. And I believe giving the report on the impact to people and kept showing them all the great stuff. And I managed to give that away to many people.
Awesome. And we did get some really good feedback on how people were both using the report and planning to use the report going forward. Even since ILA, we've heard from a library director who've been able to use it in their budget presentations that they were giving to their cities. And so we're looking forward to the opportunity to hear from folks about how they're using it. I know many of you were also at the conference and able to have experiences both at the Rails booth and at the conference. I did want to open it up just in case anyone had an impactful moment or something from the conference that they wanted to share with the rest of the board.
I wasn't there, but I want to just offer congratulations for the Atkinson Award. I love that that symposium came out of a group effort. And this year I was a presenter at the symposium, and the online layout was just so unique and engaging. It looked like a banquet hall, and you click on this table and there was a discussion about this thing, or click over to this table and you could hear somebody present about this thing. And I thought it was just very, it understood that a lot of school library workers were not taking the day off and sitting, to listen to everything. They were answering questions and checking out books and taking attendance, all while they were kind of hovering over this too. So I think it was just well set up and well thought in a thoughtful way to acknowledge the participants, and the time and the effort that they had to put into it, did not take away their interest in it. It was just kind of how life in a school library is. So I'm happy for the award, and happy for this symposium to continue good work. Yeah.
I do have a couple other things. Oh, yes, sorry about that. Go ahead, Diane.
This is Diane. I'm in East Peoria. At the ILA, I was very pleased. Cindy and I started the groundwork for the ILA Retirees Forum, and we had 4 participants. And then I heard from someone that wasn't at ILA that is very interested in joining and taking a lead too. So that was very positive. And then we spent time establishing, what our mission is going to be. And then we talked a little bit about frequency of meetings, but we're going to have to get rules and direction of what we're going to put together for policy for our meeting. So I'm going to talk to Cindy on Monday so we can continue onward and upward, getting our retirees forum for ILA going. So it isn't just for people, we had to make this clear to everyone. It's not just for people who are thinking about retiring in the next year or two, but all the way for 10 years. What our purpose is and what we can do, and any little thing that you can share with one another. It's very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you again for your efforts in getting the retiree forum started. I know I talked to at least one person at ILA who was really excited about the possibility to participate through that forum. So thank you for those. I did want to make sure that you all knew that we were able to have a really positive executive team retreat this last Wednesday. We were able to do it at the Fountaindale Public Library, thanks to Paul Mills and the library staff there, who were really wonderful hosts for us. It was facilitated by the Charmed Foundation. I don't know how many of you have worked with Charmed over the years, but they do a lot of really great leadership facilitation and development for nonprofits. And so we spent the whole day kind of looking at our own leadership styles and how we work together as a team. It was a really great day. And our team is very busy. So I really appreciated everybody taking the time to have one day together where we could all really spend a lot of time on our own learning and working. I also wanted to call your attention to something I put in the report, and this is really more for next month, but we've been talking a lot about leadership in Illinois. We get a lot of requests from libraries that are interested in Rails providing some level of leadership training and development for Illinois libraries of all types. Kate Niehoff is going to be leading those efforts, but we want to have a little bit of a discussion with this group because you represent so many different geographic areas and library types in terms of the types of leadership training that you think Illinois really needs right now. We have a small amount of money that we put aside in the budget for this year to do kind of a beginning level of training, hopefully this spring. But we are really looking forward to a robust discussion, hopefully at our next board meeting in November, in terms of what you all think is really needed in Illinois. So I will put a memo in the next month's packet with some potential questions that we'll be talking about. But if you want to think and also talk with your colleagues about what you think is needed, I think that will really help us to make sure that we develop as strong of a program as we can. I also wanted to make sure that, I know we've been part of several IMLS grant opportunities this year, but we have a brand new one that we wanted to share. And so Rails has committed support to IMLS funded iLead. This is not the iLead trustee training that you know about. It's a totally different iLead program. Preparing Tomorrow's Leaders with an EDI lens. This is a program that's been developed from a couple of different library schools across the country, and they are now in a position where the sort of curriculum has been developed, and now they want to get some libraries participating and learning. So along with Chicago Public Library and the Illinois Library Association, Rails was asked to come on as a partner to hopefully get some people involved in participating in this training. We are having our very first meeting on November 1st, so we should have some more to share, but we're really excited at being able to sort of be in the forefront. Most of the participants that were already committed are on the coast, so we're sort of the Midwest cadre, and they're particularly interested in Rails getting some rural libraries involved in this. So if you know rural libraries that would potentially be interested in being active participants in something like this, I would love to hear more from you. I also wanted to call attention to the fact that I was able to attend the Carly annual meeting on October 22nd. That was in Tuesday in Champaign. Gwen Gregory was also there. And it's really a great opportunity to learn from our colleagues in academic libraries, hear more about what they're thinking about. There's a really incredible keynote from Beck Tench, who I know many of you have seen speak, but she was really inspiring and wonderful about kind of how we engage with digital distractions and how we can make sure that we're being really mindful in terms of how we move forward. It was a great day, and Rails really appreciates being invited to that event, along with Heartland and the Illinois State Library. So it was a great opportunity to talk more with those colleagues as well. There's a lot in this report. Is there anything that you saw here that anybody would like to ask about, comment, or share for now?
Well, Monica, you skipped right over the other award that you won. That I was as an IL board member, I was very pleased to be able to vote yes. So our Association of Illinois School Library Educators has awarded Monica Harris our Crystal Honor Award for your statewide leadership and promotion and advocacy and kind of the partnership and all the good things. So Rails, it's so true. I mean, I heard it said that we're doing so much more. Actually, it was in the Rails minute. I was like, Dan said it, but not today. In the Rails minute, like we're doing so much more for school libraries, and it feels that way. Like we feel it, and so it definitely is our honor to give you that award. So I can't wait for the IL awards banquet on Friday night, Friday, November 8th, and I'll be cheering and clapping. So, yes.
I am honored, and it has been my pleasure to get the opportunity to get to know the folks at IL and to work more with our school libraries over the last 5 years or so. And I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to continue to do together. And as we said, there's so many Rails staff that work on these efforts. Like obviously the things that we're doing are because it's really a part of our mission. And I'm so happy that we can all come together and do these things. But I really appreciate the shout out. Thank you, Monica. Okay, well, before we end this portion today, we have a special surprise for you today. So you may not have had the opportunity to see this yet, but I'm going to introduce you to Ola Gronsky, our digital marketing and communication specialist, who's going to share a little bit more about a new promotional effort for the Find More Illinois product.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I'll be sharing my screen shortly, but we just wanted to let you know that we created a new video for Find More Illinois, as Monica said. So in an effort to create some new promotional material, it was really important for us to understand how the platform has actually impacted libraries and their communities. So what we did was we visited 7 of our participating libraries and asked them to just sort of reflect on their experience with the platform. And we compiled all of those stories into a short 2-minute video. So I'll be sharing that video now.
We are a public library, school library,
special library,
and we serve approximately
52,000.
a little less than 5,200, 1,600 students. We decided to add Find More Illinois because of efficiency.
We joined Find More Illinois because we needed more for our students.
Find More Illinois was the catalyst, the inspiration for automating our library.
It seemed like a perfect fit for our district since we don't have a shared catalog.
Find More Illinois is an interlibrary loan service that provides access to a growing number of library holdings in one seamless interface. Anyone can search its holdings, and users from participating libraries can request items from libraries across Illinois for delivery to their home library. Libraries of all types and sizes can join, no matter what kind of catalog software they use.
The setup process couldn't have been easier.
As a project manager, I was like immediately taken in, like, wow, someone's going to manage this one.
What I enjoy about Find More Illinois is that turnover time. It saves time.
Our collection is larger than what's within our walls.
Even if I don't have something, I don't necessarily feel like we're lacking because Find More Illinois gives us that extension.
There's something that they want and we don't have it, we can get it for them. And that's something that really just brings a lot of people up when they come in.
Find More is about helping those smaller libraries.
We're already together. We already share so many important philosophies and resources, and Find More is just the next thing that could really help you.
Find More Illinois will continue to get better the more libraries that join it.
I think it gives inspiration to the whole library.
You know, all libraries are about freedom and access and opportunity, so it fits.
So if you have the room in your budget, absolutely try to make room in the budget, prioritize it for your library and for your patrons.
If you're interested in joining our mission to expand resource sharing across Illinois, visit findmoreillinois.org.
Ola, it looks really nice and lovely, and I think it gets to show you that our voices do matters as board members, because if I recall, this was brought up last year in regards to this program, and I think we all had ideas and concepts, but it looks awesome. I've seen it 7 times, so hopefully make like 10 cents out of that. But however, it's a splendid job. I just love the fact that that's out there. It's simple, it's short, and it gets to the point. And then if you need more information, they can always reach out. So again, terrific job, everyone who was involved with it.
Thank you, Renee.
Anytime, Ola, anytime.
All right. Well, if no one has any questions, carry on with your meeting. Hopefully share that video with some people that you want to join Find More Illinois. I tried to include a different variety of library type voices, but if we could get an academic library to come on and a few more special libraries to come on, that'd be great. So use your networking powers for good.
And I'll say when I was pulling the book off the shelf, that was not staged. Like
It
that
was
I had gotten
Looks
a
natural.
Illinois request that morning. Ola and Jessica were coming, and I just waited to fill what I was going to do anyway when they were there. So
It was kismet. It was perfect.
Thank you, Monica, for participating in
Yes.
the recording. I think it's awesome. And Barb, who of course is a big part of our Find More Illinois program, is in the back in the corner of the room today too. And I know she had a lot to do with figuring this out as well. So if any of you have questions at any of the breaks about Find More or want to talk more about the program, Barb's here as well.
All right, thank you so much, Monica, Harris, and Ola. And I say that because both Monicas usually sometimes will talk at the same time, and he's a little confused there. Thank you so much. Now we're gonna move on. We're gonna hear from Layla. Hi, Leila.
Hi,
With the Rails deals and discounts, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Layla Heath, Director of Library Resources and Programs at Rails. And one of the areas that I manage includes the Deals and Discounts program. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about it along with our library resource specialists, Maggie Tillman and Jody Rupel. You can see, and you have it in your board packets, but we also have it up on the screen. It's a handout that could just contain some basic information as well as the links that we will mention today. First of all, as far as our overall Rails philosophy, we look for vendor partnerships that benefit our member libraries and our vendors. We want quality deals. We want proven, solid resources or trending new resources that offer a deep discount that translates into savings for our members. We seek transparency, logical pricing, and resources that will appeal to a large number of libraries. We have highlighted some of the information that's important to us and some of the benefits that we bring on our vendor info page. And again, the link is up on the handout. When we do deals and discounts at Rails, there are some things that I think are special in what we can offer to both our members and to our vendors. First of all, obviously we have economies of scale that enables us to leverage deals when we work together. We have over 3,600 library buildings in Rails, and of course, even more across the state. And this is not typical. When we are working with other consortia across the nation, some have several hundred, but again, we have 3,600. So it really is not typical, and it becomes a very obviously big factor when we are talking with our vendors about ways to leverage that. But along with that, it brings a lot of levels of complexity. And I don't think I've run into any other state or system that has the multi-levels of complexity that we have. So that includes library type, LSAP participation, and just a lot of different nuances throughout our landscape here. And the needs of them are very different and have to be analyzed accordingly. One of the biggest ones is when we started to move into the K through 12 market, which we'll talk a little more about later, but very different needs, obviously, than our publics, our specials, our academics. So we've been really working on those different kinds of needs. We have a bird's eye view of the overall Rails landscape, and it is really fascinating, the things that emerge as we're looking at that. And it allows us to strategize differently, and it allows us to find perspectives on ways to penetrate and optimize deals. And I think, our vendors appreciate that, and it is to the benefit of our libraries to do so. Because of the vast amount of data we work with, we've become accustomed to handling large scale operations, and that is demanding efficiencies in our procedures, including how we structure deals, our billing practices. I will tell you, we try to standardize as much as possible, but I think every single deal that we go into, something tweaks. And as soon as I set a thing, I say this, we're going to do that, something happens and there's an exception. So it's really, each deal is its own little project, and kind of, we want to do what we can, again, to get the best price and the best deal for our members in the most expedient way possible. Our Rails staff support and collaboration is an integral part of deals and discounts, and that really, really brings benefits to our members. The data team, Grant Halter and Jeanette Durecki, help us look at comparisons over all the different parameters with populations, budget, all of those things that when we're looking at a deal, we want to see how many libraries are falling into pricing tiers, or how, that kind of thing. What's the overall potential income basically from it for a vendor, and then for us, what's the potential savings in it? So we look at those across a variety of different ways, and they really help with that. Brian Smith, our Rails webmaster, has been a tremendous help because we need online forms for signups and renewals. We can do some things manually, but by the time when we have 40 libraries participating in a deal, and then when we get into hundreds, it needs to be, something online and something that's really automated. The communications team targets promotional avenues and member audiences that will benefit from the deal and really helps us. We found that some of the listservs, when you hear from us, we're really trying to target that we feel that this would be a deal or of value to your particular group. And finally, finance team provides billing through Rails, which is vital for oversight on the pricing. When needed, we send back invoices to vendors that need billing adjustments, from hundreds to thousands of dollars of savings that could otherwise, be missed. A shout out to Deb Mitchner and Kim Perry in the finance department. They keep it all going smoothly, and it is a huge benefit for our vendors to have us managing that process. It's also the best tool we have to quantify the value of the deals and discounts program, and also to control it. And finally, the probably biggest benefit, it's a chance to connect. We connect and listen to our expert librarians and our library staff, often through networking groups and listservs. The LSIM group is the electronic subscription managers. They've been in place for a long time, and they're a huge help in identifying potential resources and providing feedback. But we get feedback everywhere we go, really, and we so appreciate it. We reach out to other systems and consortia statewide, Carly, Heartland, as well as across the nation. And this feedback it informs many of our choices regarding deals to pursue. And we share the feedback with our vendors, both positive and if there are issues, so improvements can be made. On your handout, that right in the middle, we just sort of had, I'm not going to go through it, but factors that we consider when we are looking at a deal. And there are just huge budget implications. Last year, members saved over $2 million through deals and discounts with more than 1,700 subscriptions. The program's growing rapidly, hence Maggie, and trending to be over 3 million for fiscal year 25. And again, it just brings a need for those increased efficiencies and prioritization so that we can maintain a sustainable program. One thing critical to the process is participation, because all of the negotiations we do are based on that potential. And that's where our power really lies, when we can bring that economy of scale into the program. So again, we so appreciate the support that libraries give us to the program and all of your patience and your enthusiasm. And now Jody is going to talk a little bit about some of the new deals that we are offering.
Hi, I'm Jody Rubel, Library Resource Specialist. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. In the last few months, Deals and Discounts excitedly launched 3 new resources and negotiated a deeper discount on an existing offer. And I'm going to name a few of those. From Library Journal Professional Development Training, staff from all library types can take courses to bring leadership skills to the next level, improve customer service, or learn the latest technologies. Rails negotiated a deeper discount on Gale Presents Udemy, an online learning platform for adults who want to upskill their job skills, advance their skills in their current profession, or deepen a personal interest. Libraries from academic, public, and school libraries are now eligible to opt into Comics Plus from Library Pass, that offers digital comics, graphic novels, manga, and picture books from library-friendly publishers. The resource offers unlimited simultaneous access. School libraries are now eligible to participate in Load for Kids, an e-resource database of children's audiobooks, audio picture books in world languages. The platform currently provides over 4,000 picture books in more than 65 languages. The resource is an existing popular resource for public libraries. To get the word out about new resources, Maggie and I coordinate with the vendor to host informational webinars. Offering informational webinar engages and informs library staff about products and for their patrons or their own program management. Since July, we've offered 5 vendor demonstrations highlighting resources with over 119 members. Adding new resources is complex and takes time. Each deal is its own project that Layla has mentioned, could take a few weeks to many months to work through the different phases of exploring the product to negotiation and rolling out the product. As part of building with the partnership with the vendor, we take in consideration libraries that already subscribe directly or plan for the transitioning of libraries over to the Rails discounted package. At the same time, building programs, the team is preparing for the next round of renewals that could at least 4 to 6 months in advance. During November, we will be wrapping up the popular Swank, BookBrowse, and Udemy subscription renewals. For more information, visit the Rails Deals and Discounts page, where you will find a full list of offerings, free trial opportunities, webinars, and pricing. Pricing tiers are sensitive and for Rails libraries only. Subscribe to Rails eNews for promotions and upcoming webinars. Next, Maggie Toman will talk about the Rails repository for vendor privacy and VPATs.
Thanks, Jody. So yeah, I'm going to talk about another ongoing project of the Rails Deals and Discounts team, which is to collect and provide access to third-party vendor policies for both electronic resources, both for privacy and accessibility. The project is overseen by the Rails staff as well as a group of volunteers who are library staff at Rails libraries, many of whom have come from the ELSOM group that Layla mentioned. And Rails hosts a website where policies can be contributed and accessed by libraries. Rails libraries then contribute the links to policies from resources that they own. The list is publicly available to view, but members must be logged into the Rails website to add or edit their library's vendor or e-resource information. And right now, we mostly have public libraries in the resource, plus a few academics have contributed, and we hope to continue expanding to other library types in the future. And a little bit more about these policies and why this would be of interest. The privacy policies outline the types of library user data that a third-party vendor collects and how they may use it. And this may or may not align with the library's own privacy policy, so we feel it's an important thing for libraries to be aware of. So it could include anything from personally identifiable information, such as names, emails, analytics, cookie data, page views, IP addresses, search history, and location or device information. So it could be very wide-ranging there. VPATs stand for Voluntary Product Accessibility Templates, and these provide information about how electronic resources meet accessibility standards, which I know a lot of librarians are thinking about right now. So the VPAT specifically refers to the form that the library or the organization fills out that's provided by the Information Technology Industry Council, ITI. So a lot of acronyms, a portion of the presentation. And then the completed form is also called an ACR. So you might hear that term, which is the Accessibility Conformance Report. And it's often used interchangeably with VPAT. So the VPAT addresses how the product meets accessibility standards for the W3C Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and also Section 208 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It does not necessarily mean that just because there is a VPAT that the product fully complies, but it does mean that there's a benchmark there of how they might meet that compliance. They're pretty complex, but just even having it or have access to it can help to understand the accessibility. The goals of this initiative are really to provide convenient access for Rails libraries to these resources. From the repository, they can easily create a customized list for their library's own digital holdings. They can link out or share that list with staff and patrons. And then they can also use the repository to evaluate resources they may not have purchased yet, but are considering purchasing. So more information, if you want to look at the list or contribute to the list, is available on the Rails website. It's under Library Exchange and then Document Repositories. We also conveniently have a link for you on the handout as well. And all the information that we've talked about, as well as our contact information, is all listed there if you have any questions. So that concludes our presentation today about deals and discounts. Are there any other questions for us?
Yeah, I have a question about, I know Sharon was very clear that EBSCO, now that some of the EBSCO products are being offered by the Illinois State Library, how many of your past EBSCO customers continued to add EBSCO products?
We still had, we had more than expected.
Okay.
Actually, that continued with some of the supplemental products. And part of the reason for that is Consumer Reports is not included in the statewide package, which it, according to the EBSCO rep before that it never is. It's a third, because it's a third party. And the Novelist Plus is a piece that was really important to our publics. And then on the school side, there were a number of resources that they wanted the complete version instead of the state maybe included a version that was more basic. So we did have widespread participation, but the other piece of that is that it was a very quick decision-making timeframe, like a week. So people just weren't sure which way to go. They were making really quick decisions. And I think, you know, we're going to start looking at that in the next few months as to kind of what people are thinking that they want to do next year. It's still going to be a little hard. There's not a lot of data since things are just still really getting settled and into place. But so I think this next year will continue to be a transitional time, but we'll continue to offer the supplemental, you know, provided that, you know, something unexpected doesn't occur. And we'll just kind of work through that. Did you have anything specific?
No, that was just, I definitely was a victim of that. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
And so I didn't continue to subscribe to supplemental EBSCO. And then of course, the money was withdrawn from my budget, so then I wouldn't have even had it to continue if I wanted to. But I'm so glad that you understand that that might not mean that a school, that any of your previous EBSCO participants didn't want that stuff. They just, whatever. So maybe in the spring or whatever the time frame is, I think a little bit of a cool push, like now that you're more comfortable with what is being offered through the statewide resource package, like what are you missing? What
Right.
do you wish you had? What would you want to get, you know, the highest level resource grouping for your patrons or something?
Yeah, and I'm seeing that, we're seeing that there is still some confusion about the differences in what the state's including and what is supplemental. So, you know, we'll try to clarify some of those things as well. And I agree to your point that I think some of the budget shifts people may have ordered last year because the budget was already in place. This was June when they were making decisions. And so the budgets may have changed, you know, and their needs may change. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up though.
All right, thank you so much, all three of you. And I just want to commend Layla just because of the fact of the amount of work that she has to do with this and also Boundless as part of a consortium with Prairie Cat and having like a 3-year deal. It's nice to have that cooperation together.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I have to say that it is a team.
it is a team effort.
It is a total team effort. There is no one in Rails isn't. They're all a part of this. So, and our members too. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's why I get excited every time I introduce someone because I am excited. We have a lot of talented leaders and it's always exciting to see like what they have to speak about. And then obviously we're recorded. So what members are going to find out during the board meeting. So again, thank you, three of you, for all the work you've done and looking forward to what more it's going to come. Obviously, please share with your other members, other board members or other staff, colleagues about the program.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money to be saved, obviously. 2 million could be 3 million, you know.
Yeah.
So let's help each other out. Moving on to the report from the Illinois State Library. The report was emailed to the board this week. Monica, do you have anything to add?
So I just want to share, this is a little bit of a new development. And so I did want to open it up just in case there were any questions or if there's anything else that we can investigate for you. But so the Illinois State Library did let us know on Monday that they have recently received word from the Secretary of State's office and any employee of the Illinois State Library is covered under this communication that they can no longer participate in any meeting that would be recorded, either by video or phone, because they're investigating potentially kind of a relationship between meetings and then also the Illinois Eavesdropping Act. They're specifically looking at how AI transcription and the way that AI transcription is sometimes used in recorded meetings can be a factor. I did speak with Greg McCormick when we were at the Carly meeting, and he mentioned that they are expecting that this will not continue indefinitely, especially for Open Meetings Act meetings, but it is why you received the written report this month instead of a direct report from them. They are continuing to investigate this and just seeing how this will go moving forward. As many on our policy committee know, we're also working on our own AI policy. And so we're continuing to look at all of the factors around AI. We did reach out also to Julie Tappendorf just yesterday to ask if there had been anything about AI transcription that we should be paying attention to as it relates to the Illinois Eavesdropping Act. One of the things, and Julie is actually on our call today because she's going to be presenting later, but she did say, of course, that, technology isn't accounted for in all of our legislation. And so there is, and let me just make sure that I've got this correct. So there's a task force that was recently put together by the General Assembly to evaluate the use of generative AI and its legal implications, but their report isn't due until December 31st of this year. So there's no guidance on this yet. And of course, there's not a lot of case law on this at this point. So we will continue to monitor some of these things as we move forward. But again, just new ways that, we're all trying to negotiate some new things that are happening. But until then, you do have a written report from the state library, but I did want to open it up and just in case there were any questions or anything.
I have a question.
Hi, Karen.
Is that I'm confused. So what I'm thinking you're saying, don't laugh.
We all are.
Oh, they don't want to be recorded because then their voice could be recorded and each word could be used and they could talk differently. Like what I'm saying now, they can use the words, what I'm saying now, recording me and manipulate the words in my voice and make me say something different. That why?
I don't know all of the details that went into what their concerns are. I do know that there is some concerns, not necessarily from them, but in general around if there's a transcribed piece of AI, does that create a public record that wasn't there before that's voyable in a different way? So people are trying to be thoughtful about transcription and what is transcribed by AI. There's also a lot of discussion about the accuracy of the transcription because especially in a group meeting like this, if there's an AI transcription, it's very difficult, at least at the technology level that's currently available for AI, to tell who's speaking and when and who it sort of attributes that to. So it requires a great deal of editing to make sure that it's actually accurate. But what does that mean in terms of a public record? So there are a lot of questions around this, I think, that people will be considering moving forward. But I think there's not, I don't have a lot that's very specific guidance that, I can give us, but these are all things that we will certainly be talking about and considering as an organization.
Okay, I still don't understand, but I get it that I don't understand. I'll just wait to understand.
I think if you would have attended the conference, and there was a slight word that was heard by the AI Google transcript, just imagine capturing that into something where someone needs it for accessibility purposes and says, I can't believe she said that word, but she didn't say that word. It was transcribed.
Oh, because I'm reading down here and that's
Correct.
never right.
Yeah, so imagine if that was kept for public record, that could be an example of keeping.
I see.
That's just an example of what could be, what they're trying to study, I guess.
Couldn't they just turn that off during the part when the Secretary of State talks?
So we did have that so one thing to note is that we do record our meetings. We record all of our meetings, both in open and in closed session, but the Open Meetings Act really only requires us to record during closed session. But we have historically really considered it a best practice to record our open meetings. And for our monthly meetings like this one, we stream them so members can watch. We also make sure that a recorded version is available on the Rails YouTube page. So those who aren't watching live are still able to come back and get this information. So we are not necessarily required to record, but we have considered it a best practice. Sort of beyond that, it also makes it much easier for our staff who are creating minutes to make sure that it's as accurate as possible. If they're all just having to take minutes in the moment and then we're editing based on that, it becomes much more difficult to make sure that they're entirely accurate.
Would now be an okay time to ask a question? And I know maybe nobody here knows the answer, but about the content of the Illinois State Library report?
You can certainly ask
Yeah.
and then we can pass it on to them. I don't know. that
Okay. Right. So October 15th was the ending date for school district library grant, the per capita grant. And I'm just concerned to see the Illinois State Library report says that 44 school districts, how many schools could that include, are not applying for this statewide money. And maybe because they don't have a school librarian anymore, or because unfortunately, they may not want to agree to the stipulations of the per capita grant this year, which includes a statement about freedom to read. And I just wondered if I guess I would like to know how does that fall in line with past years per capita grant, and also maybe putting it in the public, like, are there public libraries who don't? Is it, this seems like hopefully I don't know. It worries me. I guess I'll just end there.
But there were 6 public libraries, right? In Rails?
Have to think of the number. I'm not sure if 6 is accurate, but there's a difference, of course, between remaining a system member and applying for the grant. So even if those school libraries don't apply for the grant, they are still eligible, of course, to stay on as system members and receive all of the pieces there. But I would say it's concerning in terms of the number that have not applied, and we do probably need to follow up and make sure that there's an understanding of what was involved there and understand the reasons for not applying. That part we don't have information on yet, but it's certainly something that's caught our attention, I think.
And I know many school librarians, and this grant is the entirety of their budget.
Absolutely.
They have zero money without this grant. And so to think that 44 school districts are choosing for reasons not to apply for this money, it impacts so many library programs and so many students.
Okay, if there are no other questions or concerns, we're gonna move on. But I feel like there's gonna be a continued discussion afterwards, so. Next up is new business with compliance with laws and updates. Monica?
Thank you, Renee. So you received yesterday an update to the original 2023 memo that was in your packet. The 2024 memo, which I really want to thank Ansel Link for sending those updates, include essentially 3 substantive changes. One is a reference to remote meetings and some of the things that we need to be aware of with remote meetings. The second is a paragraph on the recent book ban legislation, which of course we were just speaking about. And then 3 was a discussion of the website accessibility requirements of the Title II Act of the ADA. It's very much related to what Maggie was sharing around the VPAT and what was sharing around accessibility, making sure that that's aware. So this is just a requirement of our annual grant, is to make sure that our board are aware of sort of all of the laws that they need to be aware of and be thinking about. So this is an annual opportunity for us to just sort of give you a chance to look through that and make sure that you understand what you need to be able to follow and do. I know many of you are having to do this in many other capacities and trustees and other ways, but I did want to open it up in case there were questions or things that you had noted or shared as part of this memo. If there aren't questions, I do want to reiterate our thanks to Julie Tappendorf and Ansel Glink. They really keep us aware of all of the changes from year to year, of everything that we need to make sure that we are following and aware of. It's a really big job, and they always do a great job for us.
I did have a question. So where is Rails on the decennial committee report? Is that done and submitted? I just saw, or we didn't have to do that as Rails?
We don't, yes. So we don't have to create a report as Rails, but one thing we did do based on the requests of library was sort of create sample information they could include in their own decennial.
Yes.
Minutes on very meaningful meetings, if you had to do one too.
I ran some very meaningful meetings. So excited.
All right, if we have any, we don't have any more, anything to discuss and concern in regards to this, we're gonna move on. And yet we're still gonna talk about legal, so this is gonna be great. I'm telling you. Board development, legal practices for boards around social media. Julie Tampendorf is here from the law firm of Ansel and Klink. Julie?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I am going to share my screen. I typically do and some of you may have attended it before, a social media session, First Amendment social media session at the ILA. I've actually done it through Rails, through some of the continuing education, Lyra, and some other ways. This is going to be a truncated version of that, really focusing on the First Amendment issues, and then board and library employee issues with social media. So let me share my screen here. Okay. All right, I think that worked okay. You guys can see everything. The first slide, okay?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Okay, so we're going to talk about social media and government officials. And I want to start out with why it matters. First, the biggest issue with government social media is the First Amendment. And how the First Amendment applies to government social media is that the courts, including the US Supreme Court, has determined that government social media sites, so if a library or school operates a Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube, whatever platform for the government, that courts have said that is a public forum, limited public forum, but that the interactive space on those social media pages and those accounts where users interact, and that's comments and that sort of third-party content, that is the protected space on social media. And so just as with any other First Amendment activity, where there's a public forum and where there's potential government action, the government has to be careful not to engage in censorship. If it's protected speech, and we'll talk about the type of speech that would be protected, then the government can't discriminate based on viewpoint. And all that means is you can't pick and choose the content or of the message. So I like that speech, but I don't like that speech based on the message, based on the viewpoint. Comments are the issue that seems to get people or governments into court. The US Supreme Court, and for many, many years, pre-social media, has said that the right to engage in free speech under the First Amendment includes the right to criticize the government. And almost every government that's gotten in trouble for First Amendment violations or challenges, it has censored in some way protected speech, and it's usually criticism. So that's when I get calls, hey, somebody criticized the mayor, somebody criticized the board president, an employee, can we delete this? And if it's pure criticism, it's some of the highest protected speech we have. We as Americans have the right to criticize government officials and government employees without fear of being jailed or some other action taken, and that is because of the First Amendment. And so what the court says is if the government opens up a forum, and that forum would be on social media, so establishing a Facebook page or some other platform, the government invites speech, and that includes criticism. You don't get to pick and choose, and many social media policies that prohibit criticism or negative speech have been challenged and thrown out by courts for this very reason, because we have that right. So there's three things to look out for. One is comment moderation. That certainly has been a lot of the lawsuits across the country against governments and government officials is that they have deleted or hidden protected speech, and usually it is criticism, hiding or muting, or even use of a filter. And if you're familiar with Facebook, you can set up a filter And there have been governments that have gotten in a lot of trouble for setting up a filter to filter out words that end up deleting critical speech or other protected speech. The other issue that gets governments and government officials challenges in court is blocking and banning users. And usually that happens when somebody is criticizing or engaging in some kind of protected speech on government pages, and the government bans or blocks them from the page. And the biggest problem with that, and this is a big issue for the US Supreme Court recently, is that it prohibits future speech. So taking an action against somebody if they're engaging in unprotected speech by deleting their comment is one thing, but if you ban or block them, they're not able to speak at all. Basically like banning somebody from your board meetings forever. Removing them if they're violating some behavioral policy is fine, but banning them forever from public meetings is a problem, and it's similar with social media. The last thing to look out for is to not enforce or apply an unlawful comment policy. So the first
Really?
thing, yes.
Presentation, it's not playing. I don't know if you want to move forward with the slides. 'Cause I
Oh,
know
they're
you
not?
No, they're not moving forward, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can figure out let's see. How about now?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's see where we are. We're on this page. And I can share the slides too. So I can send them to Monica and you guys can have these as well. I think there's only about 10 slides, but all right. So we're on enforcing a comment policy, and it's really important. Number one, if you have a social media presence, to have a comment policy. If you are challenged, the court's going to ask, oh, you deleted somebody's comment. What did you base that on? And your comment policy needs to be legal. It certainly can prohibit speech that's unprotected. It should not prohibit speech that is protected by the First Amendment. So here's what I consider one of the most important slides. And so whenever I train, I say this is sort of the pay attention slide. This is where governments have gotten into trouble, is deleting comments that fall into one of these categories. And all of these categories are considered protected speech. Number one, we've talked about this, and this is usually the most important one. And this is just negative or critical comments about the government or any government official or employee. So if somebody is criticizing what you're doing, actions you're taking, employees in general, board members, whatever that is, if it's just purely criticism and negative speech, it is protected and it should just be left alone. The second is personal attacks against a public official. We're not talking about threats of violence. That is treated very differently. Personal attacks being that somebody is challenging what an employee or an official is doing or saying or has done or said. And that really, the personal attacks really falls under number one if it isn't a true threat. Three, this has been a big deal for courts when they see public comment policies, social media comment policies, that they have stricken language like inappropriate or inflammatory or unfavorable or offensive. And the court said that those terms are too vague and they're subject to interpretation by the government to basically use this language to say, well, I don't like what you said. I don't like the content of your comment. So it's inappropriate to me or offensive to me in a subjective way. And that becomes problematic. Or courts like some certainty. So the public who comments on your social media sites should have a better sense of what is prohibited. The last two are always a surprise when I do this training, and that is that the First Amendment and the US Supreme Court protects both profanity and hate speech. Those are protected speech. Profanity, especially when it's coupled with criticism or some other protected free speech. I don't recommend that you delete profanity from your page. You won't see it a lot because the third-party platforms, the social media platforms, usually filter that out themselves. They're not the government, so they don't have to worry about the First Amendment. It's the government that's subject to the First Amendment. Let Facebook or Meta or any of these Twitter, X, Instagram and YouTube and all of that, let those companies filter out profanity and hate speech, because again, they're not subject to the First Amendment because they're not the government, and stay away from that. Now there is hate speech that goes too far into discrimination, and that's where you can delete. And I do have a slide on that as well. So I mentioned the limiting the use of blocking or banning. And recently, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a couple of opinions on social media. They're becoming very active in this area. It took them a long time. We've had government on social media for well over a decade, but we're just starting to see cases move up. And one of the things the Supreme Court expressed a lot of concern about was governments or government officials banning and blocking people from their social media sites. And again, as I mentioned, the problem there is you're not necessarily punishing someone just for their behavior that's either illegal or violates a lawful policy. That would be deleting the comment. You're taking it to the point where you're preventing them from speaking at all. And so that's a big concern for the Supreme Court. So my advice is, block and ban people only in the most extreme cases. Reach out to your attorney before you do that and make sure that you've got a good basis for that. So what can you do? And I would recommend what you should do is to have a comment policy for your social media sites. Something that's neutral. It doesn't regulate based on the content of the message. But it makes it clear what type of content or comments are subject to removal, because you can remove non-protected speech or content. So not everything is protected under the First Amendment. And here's just some examples of type of content or speech that is not protected by the First Amendment. So people that post comments that are obscene, sexual, or pornographic, you don't have to allow that on your government social media pages and can prohibit it in your policy and then delete it. Content that promotes discrimination by the government on the basis of a protected class. And what's the difference between this and hate speech? Typically, the courts call it the call to action. Somebody simply expressing a hateful opinion about a protected class, stereotype, something along that lines, is hate speech and is protected by the First Amendment. Somebody coupling the hate speech, so expressing a stereotype and then promoting discrimination by the government because of that stereotype, that is not protected speech. This is one of those sort of tough legal areas that if you're not sure, you see something on your page, somebody may say, hey, you need to take this down. It's hate speech. Is it hate speech, which we leave up, or is it promoting discrimination by the government? We saw the difference in this when we started seeing a lot of comments on library pages about pride flags and story time, drag queen story time, things that generate a lot of controversy, and you may get a lot of posts and people expressing hateful opinions about a particular protected class. That sort of that sort of reprehensible statements on social media are typically protected, but promoting discrimination and asking the government to take an action based on that protected class is not. And again, this is, and I know I've had to advise some of my clients, some of my library clients on this issue. Where does it cross the line? Rely on your attorney for that instead of making that call. Any content that violates a legal ownership interest, like a copyright or trademark, that's not protected by the First Amendment. Neither is content that that is illegal or encourages illegal activity. Actual defamation, which is not a false opinion. Some people say he defamed me. It actually needs to meet the standards, which is a statement of fact that is false, that causes damage. True threats of violence, and this is where we usually get the police involved. So if we start seeing threats on social media, we'll typically run it by the local police department. They understand the difference. If it's something that they could charge somebody for, then it's certainly not protected speech. And then the last is spam, malware, or viruses. We see this a lot. You may see posts, just sort of spamming for selling NFTs or some other type of content that clearly is just spam. It's not free speech. You don't have to allow that on your page. Now, be careful. Spam isn't just because a patron who likes to criticize keeps posting the same comment. That's criticism and that's protected speech. But true spam is not protected by the First Amendment. So any of these type of unprotected categories of speech, you can ban. You can adopt a policy to ban it, and then you can delete. You don't have to provide notice. As long as you have a policy in place, that's the notice to somebody that this type of content is not allowed. And so I want to sort of transition, understanding the First Amendment restrictions, so what the government can and can't do on government pages, into a couple of slides about personal social media pages of government officials and employees, because this was the next level of Supreme Court review on social media. And these are fairly new cases. They came out in the spring. I think both of them came out in March. And we've been wondering ever since the first case that I remember, where a government official used his personal social media page or account and was deleting comments and blocking people, was sued, and that was former President Trump. This was the first case in this kind of realm of, when does a government employee or official's personal social media page implicate the First Amendment? As a general rule, if your page is entirely personal and you use it not at all for government business, it is not subject to the First Amendment. You can delete whatever you want, and you can ban and block whoever you want. You are not the government on your personal page. The problem became when government officials, and former President Trump being one of the first, was using his Twitter page, and it was Twitter back then, not X. He was using his Twitter page to really conduct business. He fired people. He reported on executive actions he had taken. He engaged probably 90+% on his personal page, the @real Donald J. Trump page or account, not the POTUS account, on his presidential duties and activities. And he was routinely deleting unfavorable comments and blocking and banning people from his page, and was sued by a First Amendment organization, the Knight First Amendment group. And that case, it ended up making its way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court didn't decide it because by the time it made its way there, President Biden was president. And so the court said, oh, it's moot, we don't have to decide it. But that meant that the lower court's decision that former President Trump violated the First Amendment rights of all these folks that had posted critical replies to his tweets, that all of their the deletion and the banning and blocking was a violation of their First Amendment rights. And so then the question was, when does a government official's personal account become subject to the First Amendment? How much do you have to use it for government purposes for it to turn into a First Amendment? And so we were waiting for the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in, because we had cases across the country that were all different. They all had different tests. It's predominantly used or mostly used, or you have staff posting on it, and there were just different tests everywhere. So the Supreme Court weighed in two cases, and they are on this slide. The first involved a city manager, so an employee, who used his Facebook page for city manager business, and he was deleting negative comments and blocking people. And the second case involved school board trustees, so elected officials, who used their social media pages to engage with constituents. Both of these involved employees, government employees, or officials, elected officials, on their personal social media pages. So pages that they set up as their personal pages. They were not, official trustee page or official government pages. But they were using them for government business. So they were posting occasionally about the city manager about city business and city issues. The school board was engaging with parents on their page. And the Supreme Court did take both of these cases under on appeal. And what they did is they adopted a new test. And because it's the US Supreme Court, this applies to everybody here and everybody across the country. So any government official or employee, when they engage or when they have a personal social media presence, the test for whether or not that personal page or the activities on the page are subject to the First Amendment is whether the official or the employee has actual authority to speak for the government on a particular matter and exercises that authority on social media. And that seems like a very legalese test, because the other tests that we had seen out of the lower courts were a little easier to understand. Oh, if it's predominantly government business, like former President Trump, there was no question. It was easy for the lower court because he had used his account while he was president almost exclusively. It's a little different when, let's say, the city manager is using it 90% for private, posts of his kids and vacations, and then occasionally posting about city business. But the court said it's going to be a fact by fact, almost a comment by comment or post by post analysis. If you are a public official, you have a personal social media page, and you use it in any fashion for city business or library business or whatever government you're working for, school business, that they're going to look at, if you're challenged, if you delete somebody's comments or block somebody from your page, they're going to look at each post individually and say, did you have actual authority to speak for your government on that issue? And did you exercise that authority in that post? And so it becomes a little complicated. Obviously, if you have a personal page, if you use it at all for communicating about library business, it's going to be a fact based analysis on whether, if you deleted a comment that somebody posted on your personal site, was that comment in response to a post that you had actual authority to speak on, and then you exercise that authority. And so I give a couple of scenarios. It might be a little easier to apply the test through these scenarios. And a couple of them were actually in the Supreme Court decision. So the Supreme Court kind of said, okay, what does this mean? Here are some examples. One of them would be, let's say, a mayor. Mayor's the chief executive of the city. If the mayor posted on his personal Facebook page that he is immediately issuing an executive order imposing a curfew due to civil unrest, it is very likely that a court would say that post, not the entire page, that post, the mayor has the actual authority to issue executive orders, and he's exercising by imposing that order on his personal page, that comments to that post on his personal page that are subject to the First Amendment, and he should not censor them. So like all the rules that we talked about before, negative criticism of his executive order, he would need to leave that up on his personal page. The second one would be, let's say, an example, a reference librarian shares a post from the library's official Instagram page about a library event on her personal page. And the court, this is not the example given, but it's similar. The Supreme Court said, if the act is simply sharing something that was originally posted somewhere else, that it's highly unlikely that that is going to turn that particular post into a First Amendment post. Not only that, but it's not likely that a reference librarian has actual authority to speak about library events. So it's not likely that it would meet the test. And so in this example, I think the court would say this is not subject to First Amendment. And so this particular post and the comments on it would not be subject to that First Amendment analysis. And the last one which was actually a scenario that somebody offered in a Q&A on this, was an HR director that posts a library job on his personal LinkedIn page. So even though it's a personal LinkedIn page, LinkedIn is social media because it's interactive, people can post comments, that the HR director is very likely to have the actual authority to speak on behalf of the library just in this scenario, not for everything, but on this particular matter. So posting a job opening and accepting interviews and engaging with applicants. And by posting it on the personal LinkedIn page, it probably is exercising that authority and probably would meet the test. And in that case, if there were a lot of comments to that LinkedIn posting on the personal page, I would advise the HR director, don't delete them. Now, if you guys have LinkedIn and you compare it to what you see on Facebook and Twitter, it's got kind of completely different worlds. Is it likely to have a lot of really, some of the really crazy stuff we see in other platforms? I don't personally see it on LinkedIn, so it's probably not going to be a big deal. But I think the importance of this is understanding that it's not just the government social media pages that could be subject to the First Amendment, but even your personal pages, if you mix personal and professional on one page. And the court had cautions about that. So I end with some best practices. And these were best practices directly from the Supreme Court's ruling. Number one was they highly recommended that government officials and employees add a disclaimer to their personal account, just to make it clear, this is my personal account. Any views expressed on this are views of, personal views, the page is for personal use, and it's not the views of the government. And that puts users on notice that this account is personal and this is different than the government page. That is especially important if you want to keep your page entirely personal. And so the other recommendation from the U.S. Supreme Court is to say, if you're a government official or employee, especially somebody with some authority, we're not talking about drivers or people that don't have any actual authority to speak, but certainly board members, directors, maybe HR, marketing, people that have some authority to speak. To keep your accounts separate, have separate accounts for your trustee page or your director page and your personal page. It's not legally mandated. You can use your page, but this is a recommendation. And then you don't have to worry about what happens on your personal page, because you can direct people to your professional page or to the official government page. And that's the importance of a disclaimer. Now, if you are the type that wants to continue to use your personal page as a mixed use page, that's what the court called it. So it's a mix of personal and government content. So you may use it to talk about your vacations and graduations, and you may also post about library business and events and activities and meetings and that sort of thing. If that's fine, understanding that if you do that, that you have to be careful when you do post about your government job and issues. If you have the authority to speak on that the comments that are posted to those particular posts could be subject to a First Amendment analysis, and you don't want to be deleting protected speech or banning and blocking people for engaging in protected speech. In those mixed use pages, the court is going to look at each, if you're challenged, going to look at each individual post separately Your personal posts are irrelevant on a First Amendment analysis. It is the government posts, the business that you might, the content that you might post that actually you have authority to speak on. That's where the First Amendment applies. And I know that's a lot, and it seems kind of complicated. This is such a new test for government officials and employees. We didn't think that the court would go in this direction. We kind of thought it would be, oh, only elected officials could be in trouble based on the way the cases were coming out, and only content or only personal accounts that were predominantly used for government business would be subject. And that isn't at all the direction they went in. The court's going to look at it each post by each post and account by account. And so that's why you have to be careful if you do have those mixed use kind of pages. So I'm happy to take questions.
Cannot wait to set up my third Facebook account. Business. Julie, that was informative. The one thing I do want to add, you said you're going to share these slides with Monica. Are we able to share those slides with other colleagues that might be in prominent positions, or?
I'm okay with that. If Monica's fine with it, it's fine with me.
Thanks. I greatly appreciate that.
Sure.
Question. So you talked about a social media comment policy. Are there any agencies that you feel have a great exemplary policy that we could look at for inspiration? Or are there example policies that, you know, you would recommend?
So I have seen the gamut on social media policies. Some are very comprehensive. The Illinois Municipal Lawyers Association did a social media policy that's probably 50 pages long. That always seemed a little, I worked on their group with this, and I always thought that seemed a little much to me. I thought they just didn't want to miss anything. Some of the better policies, if all you need, because you may already regulate the social media activities of your employees, which is a different issue, through your handbook. You know, that if what you're looking for is a comment policy, I think quite a few libraries have comment policies. My concern about pointing to anyone is, you know, if I don't represent you, I always say you should talk to your own attorney about it. And make sure that they're comfortable with the policies. I will say I have reviewed many government social media policies, and invariably they are unconstitutional. So almost every policy out there that I've seen, I've found language like inappropriate or, you know, personal attacks, things that the courts have clearly said you can't prohibit. So I'm careful not to just point to one just to say, oh, well, adopt this one. I think you should work with your attorney. If I represent you, give me a call and I can work with you. I have seen and have prepared one-page comment policies that are really straightforward and simple, that basically say, you know, this is the, hey, user, you know, this is a limited public forum. We're fine with you engaging with us, but here's the type of content that will not be tolerated on our page. And then you list the content that is not protected speech, and then explain if you post this content, we will delete it without notice. And, you know, just a couple of other cautions. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but I think the most important piece is if you're going to delete content in any way, and you can, if it's not protected speech, you want to make sure that you have a policy so that people are on notice of that, because there are challenges. And the first thing the court asks, get me a copy of your comment policy, because what was violated to justify you deleting that comment.
So in terms of not protected speech, what about, say, comments from a spoofed account? So an account misrepresenting themselves as the government entity or the person. Maybe the comment itself isn't spam, but the person is purporting to speak as the government entity.
Yeah, so there's a difference difference between a parody account, which has some protected free speech. So, you know, there's the library account and the I hate the library account, and the I hate the library account is a parody account, and it's protected by the First Amendment because it's criticism. The difference in that I would just leave alone and, you know, address it in other ways of trying to make sure you're sending out accurate information and that people are getting the right message and ignoring that sort of thing. But if it's a true parody account, if somebody is impersonating you, you can reach out to the platform. And I have done this on behalf of a couple of clients, municipalities. I haven't seen a library impersonation, but they certainly could be out there. And at least Facebook has been proactive. You reach out to them and say, this is the official account for such and such library. We found this other account that is purporting to be the library. It's clearly not a parody. They're not saying, you know, they don't have any disclaimer, we're not the library, but they're trying to pretend to be you and speak on your behalf. And Facebook does have a way to deal with those, and they will shut them down. So I would suggest look at their page, make sure that it doesn't have disclaimer language that says, we're not really the library, we're just speaking on library issues. But if it doesn't have any of that and they're trying to impersonate you, you can reach out to the platforms and try to have that taken down. Any other questions? I know there's a lot. This was a lot. And this was my truncated, so.
Is it permitted to respond to the protected speech that is hateful with some type of standard, generic, and yet very pointed message that this is not this type of post is not condoned by the library, or, you know, that this post is acknowledged but not appreciated, or are you just
I've seen that before. I've seen it in the realm of people are posting misleading comments, and just because somebody says a lie does not mean it's not protected speech. It's crazy. People can criticize you and they can lie all the time. And that is what it is. And correcting that is fine. I'm always cautious about saying you should answer every single comment, because sometimes people that adds fuel to the fire, and you end up in just a string of, you're not going to win the battle. And so sometimes instead of doing that, or if you're trying to redirect people, or you're trying to, you know, correct a misstatement in its constant, is maybe to, instead of responding directly to them, maybe have a different type of communication where it might go out on your Facebook page, as in, you know, we've gotten a lot of comments about X, Y, and Z, and we just want to correct some misstatements, or we want to refer you to our page and our anti-discrimination or our DEI mission. There's ways to redirect it. If you tried to respond to every single comment when you got a really controversial issue, it would never end. And they love that, because sometimes that's what they're looking for. So there's nothing wrong with responding. I think it's more, how do you do that to not add more fuel? But also, you know, you're trying to protect other maybe patrons or others, and there may be communication options that don't involve responding to every comment.
This is Monica in Burr Ridge. I just wanted to say, so Rails does have a social media comment and posting policy, just in case you were wondering. It was last updated first by our policy committee. It was vetted by Ansel Glink back in May of 2023. It was approved by this board. So we have looked at this fairly recently. There is another social media policy in our handbook that we are currently looking at revising. But one reason we wanted to make sure that Julie was here with you today is because our policy committee last year began looking at some of these these issues around social media and really talking about what policies we needed. And the policy committee really thought it would be a really good idea to have Julie here to really explain a lot of these changes and nuance that is happening, especially with elected officials, since all of you are affected. So we really appreciate you and your expertise in sharing this with our group, Julie. But I also want to thank our policy committee for identifying the need for this kind of a presentation.
Well, thank
All
you
right,
for
thank you
having
so-
me, everybody.
Thank you so much, for joining us, Julie, and for that presentation as well. There are no further comments or questions. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is board member reports. Okay. All right. At this time, board members are invited to share any news or updates from their library or area. I'm going to get started just because this was just a recent one. Rails held at NAMI, what is NAMI represented for? Like, what is it?
Alliance of Mental Illness, right?
See, that's always like oh man, the trigger word of trying to figure out. All right, but anyway, NAMI was here. They did a mental health first aid workshop. The kind of funny thing is both my sisters actually signed up for the same workshop without even knowing it. So they had 3 labels in one workshop. They did a phenomenal job. I think the best part about it was just seeing all these libraries okayed and confirmed all these staff members to be here and present. And obviously they all really do care for their patrons and staff members. So it was just nice to see. But no, they phenomenal. And obviously it was so popular that there's another session being held at the Bloomington Public Library. Is that already full?
No, November 19th.
Is it November, but is it full or is it still?
No, there's still space available.
Hey, thank you. So there's still space available. So if you have staff members are interested, I would highly suggest for them to go. Yeah, no, it was a lot of information. And one of the things that I learned from it that I thought was like, oh, I didn't think about it that way, is try not to labeling individuals. So even though they might have an illness or a symptom, that's how you should treat it, as a symptom. It doesn't define them. So that was an eye opener. But overall, just an excellent workshop. And I do hope you do allow your staff members to join in and learn something new.
I have something to share. So yesterday I was able to attend a session by the Coalition for Transforming Higher Education Funding that was held at Northern Illinois University. This year they are working on Senate Bill 3965, which is a new scheme for public university funding in Illinois. So that I also was able to get some information and share it with the ILA Public Policy Committee. So that may be something you will hear about. It's not like only for libraries, it's for all of public university funding, but it might affect libraries as part of public universities. And if you look at their website, they have some interesting infographics and information about the state of funding for higher education in Illinois.
I would love to thank Rails for sponsoring part of our Association of Illinois School Library Educators Conference. Ironically, the awards banquet in which Monica will receive the Crystal Honor Award is sponsored by Rails. We'll double enjoy that fun evening. But thank you very much for coming as a vendor, as a presenter. Many Rails staff are coming to present, and we appreciate your adding to the knowledge of school librarians. I also encourage everybody, if you're not signed up for the Rails book discussion about this amazing book called That Librarian by Amanda Jones. The book discussion is on Monday. And so you have plenty of time to read this book. It's fine. Amanda Jones is a school librarian from Louisiana who spoke out against suspected, I'll put it that way, suspected censorship at her public library. And in return for her speaking out in favor of freedom to read, she was targeted personally because she's the middle school librarian in town. And so she was called a pedophile and a groomer. And her public stance about her public library policies were then used against her. She spent one weekend crying in bed, I think as any one of us might, and then got really mad and took the two main defamers to court. And it's the story of her battle to clear her name and to stand up for her First Amendment rights to say what she said at a public library. So very cool. And encourage you to read that book. And finally, I want to say that on Monday, I am hosting so far 35 high school librarians at my high school library. We have a very vibrant networking group, which is made even more vibrant by the fact that we all share a listserv hosted here by Rails. It was hosted elsewhere, and then we moved it to the Rails new platform, and I think joined many new participants have joined us, and we like to meet in person 2-3 times a year just to learn from each other. Many of us are the solo person who's there of our kind in our building or our district. And so it just really feels good to share together. Jessica Silva is coming to share cool stuff about deals and discounts and other things that Rails can do to support our high school. So so many things, like I feel like there's a lot of circle and things that start and end with Rails make me happy along the way. So thank you.
I just wanted to take a moment to shout out libraries that are serving as polling places right now. They're an early voting location, and on our first day, we had close to 700 people.
Wow.
And so it's a unique opportunity to get new people in your library and show off, services and things they might not be available. But it's also a challenge when you have new people in your building who maybe don't already know your layout or how things are managed. And you're just serving as a host for another entity. So it's not really, hours aren't under your control and you have to deal with those kinds of challenges. So it's like solar eclipse classes, but for 2 weeks. So I just want to shout out everybody for, meeting this challenge and, sharing with our other government entities.
I will give one other kind of shout out to NAMI. So we have a staff in service day on Friday, and NAMI offers a variety of what they call community education classes, and they will come into your library, your workplace for free. So they're coming to do Mental Health 101 for us. And that NAMI Metro Suburban is like the bomb. And then their answer is there's, another great NAMI chapter near you. So really reach out to them. It fits with their mission. To connect with those of us that provide services, particularly to youth and children, to have a healthy understanding of mental health and its place, as concerned adults that aren't necessarily parents or family. So they're a great group.
Hearing that, does anyone else have anything else to add? All right, well, I greatly appreciate everyone sharing that. And that is Gwen, Monica, Amanda, and Mrs. Jennifer. Next is a quick recap. Our next board meeting will be held on Friday, November 22nd, 2024. The agenda will include an overview of the Rails CE Consulting Program by Kate. Hi, Kate. Looking forward to that one. And board development will be a best practices in online safety with Wesley Smith. Hopefully, are we doing another voice one?
I don't know what we have.
Looking forward to that one because that was nifty last time.
Aaron volunteers. Sounds like an old lady from England.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Please let Emily know, obviously with the holidays coming up, please let Emily know if you're not going to be able to make it. Obviously, we were having a difficult time meeting quorum. So during the holidays, we are all busy. Does anyone have any questions, concerns about next board meeting? All right. If there are no further comments or questions, thank you for your attendance today. I hope you have a well-deserved, safe, and great weekend with friends and family. I adjourn this meeting at 2:48 p.m. Thank you.